It's kind of wild when you stop and think about it. Our entire world, I mean, everything from banking to healthcare, it all runs on software. The economies of pretty much all developed nations are completely dependent on it. So, with so much at stake, you'd think we'd have a foolproof formula for making sure these projects succeed, but we really don't.
Oh, for sure. We hear stories all the time about projects that are, technically amazing, the code is elegant, the architecture is brilliant, but they still completely crash and burn. They go way over budget, they're delivered super late, or worse, people just don't use them. So that really gets us to the big question for today. Who or what is the real key to making a project work?
Right. And the answer, which we seem to forget over and over again, isn't in the lines of code or the servers. It's the people. The actual critical difference between a project that takes off and one that nosedives almost always comes down to how well you understand and connect with the people involved. Okay, but the people is, well, it's a little vague, isn't it? When we're talking about a big software project, who are we actually talking about? Who are these people that apparently hold all the cards? So, in the world of software engineering, we actually have a name for them: stakeholders. And a stakeholder is basically anyone, any person, or any organization who's affected by the system and has a legitimate interest in it. And what's so important to get is just how broad that definition is. We're not just talking about the client who's paying the bills. Man, we can actually break them down into a few main groups to make it clearer. So, first up, you've got your end users, the people who are actually in the trenches using the software every day. Then you have system managers, and they're worried about keeping the lights on, making sure it works with all the other companies' software. You've also got system owners. They're the ones holding the purse strings, the ones who are ultimately on the hook for the project's success. And then there's this huge category of external stakeholders, which could be anyone from government regulators to the general public. Okay, that makes sense in theory, but can we make it a bit more real? Like, what does this look like in an actual project?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at a real-world system, a patient management system for mental health called MentCare. Now, who are the stakeholders here? Well, you've got the obvious ones, right? The patients, the doctors, the nurses. But then think deeper. You've got medical receptionists trying to book appointments. You've got the IT staff who have to maintain this thing. You have healthcare managers who need it to generate reports for billing. You even have a medical ethics manager whose main job is to make sure patient privacy is protected. All of these people have a totally valid and often competing interest in how this system works.
Wow, okay, so that's a lot of people. Now that we know who they are, what's their actual role? I mean, how do you tap into all that knowledge and all those different needs to build something that works? Where do they fit into the process? Man, their role is absolutely critical right at the very, very beginning, in a phase we call requirements engineering. You got to think of this as the foundation for the entire house you're about to build. It all kicks off with elicitation and analysis, and that's the messy human part where you're just trying to figure out what everyone actually needs. Then you move to specification, which is where you try to write all that down in a detailed document. And finally, you get to validation, and this is so important. It's where you go back to all those people and ask, hey, did we get this right? Man, and that very first step, elicitation, it really just boils down to one simple but incredibly powerful question. What do the system stakeholders require or expect from the system? Answering this one question for every single one of those stakeholders is the absolute heart of the whole thing. But that sounds insanely hard. Do people even know what they want half the time? And does a doctor even speak the same language as, say, a hospital's financial manager when they talk about technology?
You just hit the nail on the head. Those are the big challenges. A lot of the time, stakeholders don't know what's technically possible, so they can't even tell you what they want. They talk about their needs in their own world's language, not tech speak. And yeah, like we saw with MentCare, a doctor's need for speed might directly conflict with a manager's need for detailed data. It's a complicated, messy human puzzle.
So with all of that, you've got conflicting priorities, people changing their minds, huge communication gaps. Is it really worth all the headache? What's the real payoff for trying to juggle all of this? The payoff is, well, it's everything. It's the difference between success and failure. Look, if you ignore stakeholders, you're pretty much guaranteed to have constantly changing requirements. That leads to incredibly expensive rework. I'm talking stuff that can double your budget. And very often, the project just fails completely. But when you actually engage with them, you build a system that people actually need and want to use. The design quality shoots up, and, believe it or not, you end up spending less time and effort in the long run because you're not constantly fixing and rebuilding things.
Man, at the end of the day, it really comes down to the difference between two ideas, verification and validation. Verification asks, are we building the product right? Is the code good? Does it meet the specs? But validation asks a much, much more important question. Are we building the right product? Does it actually solve the problem for the right people? You can build a flawless, bug-free piece of software that nobody wants. And engaging your stakeholders is the only way to make sure you get validation, that you're actually building the right thing.
So it all comes back to the people every single time. And the one question you should probably walk away with is this. For whatever you're working on next, who are the forgotten stakeholders? Who's that person you haven't talked to yet, whose input might just be the key to it all?